there's no prep going into this. I just got a message from Matt, well, like 15 minutes ago,
Yes.
maybe tops, saying, I just want to interview people because that's what I want to do. And I said, okay, cool. Let's go. So
The time has come. Here we are. That's it.
Here we are. We're blowing the dust off. We're brushing away the cobwebs.
In a big way, dude. I feel like we've got a guaranteed one view. I'm sure LD will watch the full thing. So, fucking hell, man. Where to begin? I'm curious. All right, here's one. Here's a good opener.
Yeah.
Give me an overview, because I also need to accommodate the fans. Give me an overview of your music, your history and involvement in music.
Okay. Maybe I'll just do like a from when I was younger and up until now, I guess, like kind of a chronological sort of thing. I started playing the clarinet in high school at some stage. I think maybe it was like year 7 or year 8, because you had to play the clarinet in order to play the saxophone. You like the clarinet was kind of like the L plater kind of instrument before you were allowed on the big boy saxophone.
I remember the castanettas being the L plater instrument. Dude, clarinet is not a basic instrument.
Yeah, right. But it does, like, it's the same. It's all the same. Like where you put your fingers and everything like that is the same as a saxophone. So, it's the same kind of, I guess, muscle memory to a degree, and same the way you play it. It's all very similar. But I guess they wanted people to prove themselves, I guess, on the clarinet. Before they hit the saxophone. So I played the clarinet. 2 years rolled around after having played the clarinet, and I was like, so when do I get that saxophone? And they're like, oh right, yeah, we forgot. Sorry about that. There are no saxophones left.
It's not in the budget.
So my mum was very generous, and she ended up buying a saxophone so that I could play one. And I well and truly lost interest within like 6 months. Like, I was just pretty much done with it. So that that I guess, like, the music playing interest in me died off for a while. And in between, I ended up changing schools. And I made a bunch of new friends, and among them were people who played instruments, I think, as well. Maybe by that stage, I can't remember maybe what age I was, but it was around about that time I actually picked up playing guitar. I think my good friend Tom Holland introduced me to playing guitar, and it blew my mind that I could be playing songs, in my mind at least, like close enough to what was being played on the radio, that kind of thing. Like, to realize that, like, so much of popular music is actually like,
achievable.
I guess, like, achievable, accessible to people who were, getting into music. So that was a lot of fun. And I ended up like, after I got my my acoustic guitar, I think I got given one for my birthday. Could have been my 16th or 17th birthday. I was playing, like, I don't know, maybe like 4 hours a night or something, and not really, like, I wouldn't say practicing. I would say I was just playing it. I guess I happened to be practicing, but I was just learning and playing songs. I was playing like Green Day, The Offspring, or just like simple, like power chords, bar chords, that kind of thing. And I guess I ended up, like, my music taste probably diversified quite a lot when I changed schools, and made a bunch of different friends who were all really into, like, music that at the time that I didn't really understand the value of, put it that way. Like, I heard it and I was like, this is just noise. Like, this is terrible. And what I didn't realize was that it was some of those bands that I, either months or years later, absolutely fell in love with. Yeah, really fell in love with, and kind of feel like once I got over the hurdle of, I guess like, I think like production value was a big hurdle for me without realizing, as a kid, like when you grow up listening to like singles on the radio and stuff like that, and really
Mm.
well produced, like top 40 artists, that kind of thing. And then you get introduced to like punk music. It just sounds, like the production quality is pretty terrible. And I think that
Yeah.
was, regrettably, I think that was an influence on my taste when I was growing up. Um, but yeah, kind of getting past that hurdle, and finding just this really compelling, I guess, uh, not really genre, but like just a lot of music that wouldn't have appealed to me beforehand.
Mm.
All of a sudden, I guess, did kind of just slowly opened up. So, um, yeah, started getting into, I guess, like a bit more punky kind of stuff. Like Refused ended up being one of my all-time favorite bands. That
Mm.
album, Shape of Punk to Come, is still, I think, probably top 5 or top 3
Dude,
albums
it stands
for me.
up. Absolutely stands up.
It
Yeah.
does. It really does. For an album, I think it was released in '97 or something. It's just so well produced for the time,
Mm.
and so well written, and just yeah. Um, um, yeah, so I started playing. I ended up buying an electric guitar at some stage.
Mm.
It was an Ibanez. I can't remember if it was new. I think it was new, and I got it with like an amp as well as one of those like cheap amp and guitar combos.
Yeah, combo. Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
We've all been
just
there.
I don't know what, like 10 watt, like
Yeah.
practice amp, that kind of thing. Um, the kind of thing that like you before you have your first ever band practice, you kind of cross your fingers and you're like, oh, I hope it's loud enough, and it definitely isn't. Like it.
Nah, dude. Nah, dude. You can if you can
Yeah.
talk over it, you got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. um, yeah, so I started learning, more and more stuff on electric guitar, and at some stage, I think maybe during the final year of high school, or maybe it was the year before. I can't remember. I'm pretty terrible with these details, but I got asked if I wanted to join um, what was basically a hardcore band,
Mm.
and I was like, look, if you think, like what I'm doing works, kind of thing, because like I was very, very new to writing anything at that stage. I've maybe been playing guitar for, I don't know what, 12 months, maybe a year or something like that. Um, and I'd learned, like hundreds of songs by that stage, but
Mm.
actually writing, um, I had very little experience in. Um, so yeah, I think I was pretty, it was like a tentative kind of yes, but I didn't want to be in the spotlight by any means, in any regard. Like I
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
just wanted to do my thing, and if that works out, then that's great. So yeah, so um,
So you've got the
we were
guitar. You shredding up the
so
top 40.
yeah, that's
Just
right.
join
So
your
we're
first hardcore band.
just joined my first hardcore band, and the band ended up being called the Inertia Response. Um,
Ah, clever. Deep.
yeah, later known as Hijack the Hearse, which I believe was a line from a piece of poetry that was revered by the lead singer. We had
Yeah.
two vocalists, which was an interesting take on things. I'm not really sure what kind of dynamic that added at the time, other than
Two different
um,
styles or two dudes, same style, just both wanted
looked
to do
pretty
it?
different. I mean, like Cam and Angus. These were the two guys, the two vocalists. One, Angus was. I mean, they were both just screaming a lot. But
Mm.
from memory, Cam's style was more like a metalcore, kind of like a raspy, sort of like you could barely make out sort of lyrics or words, sort of
Mm.
thing.
Yep.
And Angus, I think there was a bit more articulation going on there, but I mean, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe, to be honest. And I don't really know how to describe the band, because
Mm.
a lot of people at the time. Um, so we played shows, and we played quite a few shows on the peninsula. Luckily, the peninsula is pretty supportive of hardcore bands, or at least it was. I don't know what is this, like 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. So yeah, we were playing we were playing a place called Oscars, which after we stopped playing there at some stage turned into a strip club. That's just across the road
Wow.
from Frankston station.
Hmm.
Yeah, many a show played at Oscars, but we also played like at one stage we played out the back of, I think it was Paddy's Bar. I don't know if that's still there in Frankston. But like everyone ran so late that I think our set started at like 2 or 2:30 a.m. So it was
Dude,
like
you
just a
cut. You,
handful of
yeah.
people there, and we were all just like so over it. We were so
Yeah.
done by the time we
Yep.
started playing, but we played anyway, and whatever. And that particular gig, we had a girl sitting off to the side of the stage, and she was just sitting there cross-legged, either on the ground or maybe on one of the PA speaker cabinets,
Yeah.
and had her eyes closed and was just sitting still the whole time that we were playing. And apparently, when we were done, she came up to Angus, one of the singers, and said, "Your music does things to me." And that's
Wow.
probably I think one of the highest accolades that that band has ever received. So I think we recorded twice, I think at Melbourne Records, if that's still there, with a guy called Renee, and we were on a couple of compilations put out by a um, local label. I don't think they got any like radio play or anything like that.
Mm.
Excuse me. But the band dissolved. Dissolved at some stage. We got to play like a few shows in the city as well, which was cool. It felt like a big deal at the time because
Yeah.
coming from the peninsula,
Absolutely.
it's sort of like making your way up. We played at
Yeah.
the Art House a few
Ah,
times.
cool. Yeah.
I think we played at the Metro upstairs.
Yeah.
This was back in the days of like Goo. Yeah, I think we played Goo once. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. But I guess that was like dipping my toe
Mm.
into the waters for the first time. After that, I can't remember when I started playing drums, but at some stage I also started playing drums. And luckily, we held onto that saxophone, which was quite expensive at the time.
Hey,
And
dude, sax
I
isn't a cheap instrument. That's not like a
Not at
recorder.
all,
It's not a
not at all,
throwaway
man.
item.
It's not. No, it's not an ocarina. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into a saxophone, as it turns out. Um, so I pawned the saxophone for a new drum kit. I got a Tama
Ah,
kit because
yeah.
I had borrowed a friend's Pearl, like it was like a 60s or a 70s kit. My friend Nick, it just lived at my house, and at that stage I'd probably put in hundreds of hours of practice on that kit. So yeah, at some stage I went ahead and got my own kit, and again, like probably for the first year of playing, I think I was playing 3 or 4 hours a day. Like I just loved sitting down and playing on the kit. And um, at some stage after that, I think I was in, I guess I was in a band. I don't know if I don't think we ever played any shows. I think we recorded like one or two songs as
Mm.
well, but we were in a band called Fuck Mountain. And I think we
Ah,
had four or five songs. I think I was the drummer. I think I was the drummer.
you should know
So I
what
was,
instrument you played. Man, you're,
yeah,
you're been a
yeah,
busy
probably
boy, man.
should.
You've been very,
Yeah,
very busy.
yeah. I think it's that like um, uh, jack of all trades, master of none vibe.
Ah, I would
But
disagree. I would disagree with that.
okay, all right. So around that time, I realized that I had a lot of strong opinions around what everyone was doing in the band, and I thought to myself,
Mm.
I don't want to be
Billy
that guy
Corgan.
who just tolls. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be that guy that tells people what they should be doing. So
Mm-hmm.
I went and bought a bunch of recording gear. Um, on the fact that like, well, if I've got so many ideas, then I need an outlet for that instead of trying to tell other people what to do.
Mm.
So I bought some recording gear, which at the time was like, it was a bigger deal to be buying recording gear back then, just in so much as there were no like YouTubes, there were no
Yeah.
like, like there weren't
Yeah, yeah.
like you found like scraps of information on forums every now and then for like the hardware required to do what you wanted to do, sort of thing. So
Yep.
I put a lot of research into like what laptop I needed, what kind of like PCIe card I needed for the FireWire to work well with the recording interface that I was buying at the time.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I ended up buying like an 8 mic or eight channel recording interface and a bunch of different microphones, basically enough to record a drum kit comprehensively, you know, like to get a
Yeah.
pretty good
Mic it
sound out
up.
of a
Yeah.
kit. Yeah. And so yeah, I just had like mics set up on my drum kit, and would spend a lot of time just messing around with like mic positions, and like, you know, like learning more and more about like EQ, compression, all the basics. And I would just spend days at a time just like hyper focused, losing myself in this thing that very quickly became, I think, like an obsession of mine. And I think it was
Mm.
it was the convergence between the science of how audio recording works, in that, you know, like just the fact that we have microphones still blows me away. Like what an incredible thing that we
Yeah.
have. And the fact that we now have microphones that you can plug into computers as well is quite mind blowing to me.
Dude,
Yeah,
look at this.
yeah, look at
It's
that.
unreal.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah, and that, I think, crossed um, with music, you know, like such a like almost unquantifiable art form,
Hmm.
which, you know, like when met with this really scientific, highly engineered approach to kind of capturing that art form, and
Mm.
then trying to, I don't know what, recreate it or make it better or make it do something else, you know, with a process, was just, yeah, it was just staggering to me. Really, really mind blowing. Super, super interesting. So
Yeah.
I lost a lot of time doing that. And I was studying multimedia systems at the time, which um, I realized at some stage I was never going to do as a job. I just couldn't see myself at a desk 9 to 5, kind of doing whatever it was that I was doing in that degree. So I ended
Yeah.
up
What's the job prospects of someone holding a what?
multimedia systems. At the time, it was kind of like, you remember when Flash was a thing in web
Mm.
browsers? It was that era.
Newgrounds.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like maybe you could become an intern at Newgrounds. It was a little
That's
less
sick.
bleak than that. You know, like web design was probably the main thing, but like
Yeah.
they
Yep.
tried to split it between design and like a bit of like sysadmin and, you know, some back end stuff, but nothing great. Like I heard that a lot of people didn't end up getting jobs out of it because you ended up
Mm.
with like, I don't know, a bit of everything, but, you know, not really enough of any one particular thing to be that valuable.
It must have
Um,
been particularly hard back then, dude. When like the technology was evolving at such a rapid rate, you could specialize in something that's antiquated in like two
yeah,
years.
I think so, but I think that's also just the nature of tech in general. You know, like uh, if you know, I would say that a lot of people who specialize in something probably need to remain involved in like the language of how it
Mm.
moves, because it is constantly kind of changing. So maybe even just the nature of that was enough to like put me off. I just didn't like the idea of needing to be engaged in this world of whatever it was,
Mm.
that I just did. Yeah, it just didn't compel me at all. Nothing like, at least, what I was finding with audio and with music. So I ended up dropping my degree to go into an advanced diploma of, I think it was called Music Industry Technical Production. So it was sort of
Ah, yeah. I did a vet
a lot
course
of,
in that.
yeah, cool, yeah, yeah. You probably did like just a little kind of like a cut down version
Here's
of
how you roll
that.
lead.
Exactly, all of
You know,
that.
I
Yeah,
got the basics, dude.
yeah, totally. And I kind of I went into that with like, I guess, quite a lot more hands-on experience than a lot of other people going into it
Mm.
had.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because I had my own mics, I've been doing my own recordings, you know, for some time. Just not
So what
with
were you
like
doing with those? Were you laying down tracks, or were you just recording like here's just like a bit of me blasting away on the kit and just refining that,
a,
or were you
a
actually
bit
laying
of
down the work?
so a bit of both. I mean, it was interesting because I didn't end up writing as many like songs as you, or as I would have thought I would have. I ended up writing like ideas, so it might have been a riff or it might have been like a progression,
Mm.
um, that if I had have applied like songwriting theory to, they, could have turned into songs. But I ended up, because I had such a perfectionistic kind of attitude with this. If I put down something I really liked, I hated the idea of re-recording it or recording more of it, because I was so afraid I couldn't capture whatever it was that I
Yeah.
liked so much about it in the first place.
Yeah.
So instead of writing full songs, I was writing like riffs and progressions. And once I'd gotten like the thing that I was happy with that riff or progression, I'd then like hammer down on the production of that thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like try and make that thing the best kind of possible thing that it could be. And I think typical of anyone who ends up doing audio in general, I would have like maybe hundreds of bounces of different mixes of this thing, which would in theory be iteratively better than the last.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I didn't really, like I didn't have the perspective to know, maybe just like walk away from it for a little while and then come
Well,
back and
yeah,
listen.
because I imagine it's damn near impossible to know when you're just moving sideways.
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, I didn't, it's not like these things had deadlines, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't come at it from a productivity perspective. It was much more just like, this is a passion project of mine. But like, yeah, I ended up, like that's what I'd be listening to in the car. I'd be listening to different mixes. Be listening to, my mixes walking around in headphones, like just
hmm
absorbed in it completely pretty much for a while. I did end up, like, luckily I found a bunch of the things that I actually recorded quite recently on an old hard drive that I dug up. So I was really happy to realize that, because there's actually one song that is a proper song. It's not very long. It's maybe like two and a half minutes or something like that. But it was when I was listening to a lot of the Black Keys, and it's got like the influence is very, very strong. You could
Okay.
say, I guess. But yeah, it's
Well,
sort of like,
dude, you got to get it up on what do you call it? SoundCloud. Link in the
yeah,
description.
yeah, totally. All right, yeah, let's do that. All right, so when you put this out, I'll
So you can
yeah, I'll,
pause here, sample that.
yeah,
There's
exactly,
gonna
and then come
what
back.
yeah, dude. Because even on this is like completely just to interject here. I remember
Mhm.
when going on your Deadpan Audio website and just listening to some of the projects that you'd been involved in various capacities, and there is a lot of people waffle on about how they have like a broad interest, like, oh, I listen to all sorts, but listening to the kind of stuff that you played as well, I was like, this dude is actually, there is a lot of stuff here. Like it is not like, oh, there's Starbuck, he's the hardcore guy. Like there is a full spread and all different instruments. Like there's definitely going to have to be a link to
Yeah,
the
sure, yeah,
myriad of things that you've recorded and been involved in.
yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to link them. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, uh, I without, like, I'm going to try and make it spoiler free, but yeah, I've jumped around instruments and roles, I guess, within bands a bit.
All right, well, yeah, here's a
Over
basic
time.
question. I'll give you
Yeah,
like a bare bones one.
yeah.
What in your experience, I'm going to suspect that it's drums, because drums always just seem the most fun. What is most enjoyable? What's your preference? Just if you started the band right now, you assemble whoever you want. Are you playing drums?
Um, so when I was playing drums in a band, I think I said there's no way I could play drums again unless I had someone loading in and loading out for me
Yeah.
every
Oh,
show.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was the
There are
thing.
obvious, yeah,
Yeah, so there are like
restrictions.
definite caveats as far
Yeah.
as yeah, what you're playing and why.
Yep.
But when I was behind the drums, I was always really jealous of everyone else, because like a part of me always just wants to be like there, like in front of people and like
Mm.
jumping around, or like playing, or like like dancing or whatever, and you can't dance sitting behind the drums. So
Well, I seem to
um
remember a couple of incidents with Mitch when you were playing with In Tongues. He was a spicy boy behind the tongues.
he was
He
a
was
spicy boy behind the tongues. Yeah.
up and
Yeah.
about more often than not.
Yeah, he was for sure. Yeah, I like, as far as what's the most fun. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the music. This is a boring answer in that, like, I'm not going to be like, bam, drums, that's it.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to pick your favorite kid or something, dude.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, um, I just love playing whatever instrument that I feel like I'm writing the best with at the time,
Mm-hmm.
because that will mean that I'm putting all of my energy into playing it, like
Yeah.
just
Yep.
everything that I have. And you know, like that I, you know, like that felt amazing at times when I was playing the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Even though when I was, so I guess I'll try and like backpedal into one of the, like the next band I was in was a band called Reservations, and this was with two guys that I went to high school with, as well, like same high school as the other guys I joined the hardcore band from. And I would describe them as kind of like that band was kind of like a summary Kings of Kings of Leon.
That's
Like
the
that
one.
sort
I
of.
really like that. I like that band.
Mm,
That was
yeah,
some good tunes.
yeah. Like listening back, it's incredibly listenable.
Yeah.
And really, really well written songs as well. And they were a lot of fun to play. But what ended up happening was I was in Reservations, and I was also like I joined In Tongues at some stage when I was in Reservations.
Ooh,
And
we're getting into the spicy stuff.
yeah, and it's, look, at some stage it just became like a lot of effort to be in those two bands at
Mm.
once. And I ended up saying to the guys in Reservations, I was just like, I can't put in what, you know, like what this band kind of deserves. And
You were drumming for them, right?
yeah, I was drumming.
Yeah.
So I was drumming in Reservations. I was also doing some backing vocals,
Yep.
a little bit at that stage. And I kind of feel like I think a part of me has wanted to be a vocalist for some time, but just really, really, really needed to work up to it very, very slowly.
Yeah, dude. When you got there,
Yeah.
spoiler again. Good Lord. When you got there, boy, did you arrive.
Yeah, so I guess we'll get there. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so In Tongues. So In Tongues, I think, is probably like the band that like we weren't trying to be successful. We weren't playing any games. We didn't have a manager, but we were selling out venues in Melbourne. You know, like we sold out our EP. Our last show we sold out, the Grace Darling, which was amazing, and we played a reunion show. I think like 18
Can
months later. We sold
confirm at Wrangler. Oh my God. Oh
yeah,
my
Wrangler as
God.
well. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just some incredible shows that we got to play. We played underneath. There was a generator party that we played underneath the where is that highway that comes out of Melbourne towards the north. One with like the big sticks coming out of it. I can't remember what it's called. But
I know, yeah. I'll put a subtitle in because you'll remember, and then
yeah,
the magic of editing.
Yeah, totally.
Is it the
we
Westgate?
played.
Is the Westgate?
Could
No.
be.
That's out to the
No,
west.
it's the one that like
It's not out to
curves
the
up.
north.
Yeah. Hey, Matt.
Okay, hang on. Just disregard me for a bit.
Yeah, we played, I don't know, just a bunch of cool shows, and like warehouse shows and stuff like that as well. And yeah, just fucking had the time of my life in that band. And I was playing bass at that stage. So I joined them as a bassist because they needed a bassist. And I think it was either Mitch or Andy who I knew at that stage, just through other people and through music as well. And yeah, they had me along to a practice. And the problem I had with playing bass in Tongues is that I obviously had been a guitarist for years. And a lot of the time they were just like, dude, just like play bass, don't play guitar. Like just chill out a little bit. But I think because I'd been a drummer and a guitarist, bass as the next kind of step made a lot of sense to me, because I kind of, I think it really quickly clicked that, you know, this is the thing that gives context to both of those instruments and supports them at the same time. And yeah, just had a great time with that band. When we ended up breaking up, we ended up forming another band very quickly, called Coins, and that was yeah.
Oh,
So you remember Coins?
yeah, I remember Coins. I think it was like once ever. I only saw you guys maybe once, maybe twice.
Yeah, so the situation was when In Tongues broke up, Andy was headed to the UK in like 6 or 7 months after that. So everyone else was kind of like, "What's the point? Let's just call it." And
Mm.
I remember pushing really hard. I was like, "No, fuck that! Like we've got Andy for another 6 months. Like let's do something. Let's see if we can write some songs and maybe play a show or two, before he leaves, sort of thing." And um, we managed to find a lead singer, this guy Tyrrell, who
Oh,
just
he is
like,
such a good character. He is such a
yeah,
good
just
boy.
yeah,
I
yeah,
liked him.
really, yeah, good guy, good guy.
Yeah.
So much energy, like just
Yeah.
like you can't, you couldn't stop the energy coming out of him. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he wrote so quickly, like so quickly. Within 3 months, we had like a 6 or 7 song set
Mm.
that he'd had. He had lyrics to all of them, and we played a bunch of shows. We played shows for like 2 or 3 months, and again, like just had a great time playing them. And for me, musically, I actually felt like Coins was, I liked the music that I wrote and that the band wrote in Coins more than in Tongues.
Well, I didn't know this, but it sounds like you were much more involved in that. Dare I say?
Um, yeah, well, there were a few tracks already written in Tongues when I joined.
Mm.
So I was kind of just like, I guess, like taking what was there and rolling with it. But I think most of the tracks we ended up playing as in Tongues, I had written the bass to by that stage, I think.
Were you involved in the writing of Hickey?
Um, no, I think Hickey was like the third song that they'd wrote.
Mm.
And
You missed
I
out,
don't,
dude. What a
I
track.
did. I did. I mean, like I got to stand around playing it like I was involved in
Yeah.
it. No one knew. I'm pretty sure I didn't write the bass for that anyway. Anyway, either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Coins happened and then, obviously went away. I think we played a show or two with Yam on guitar.
Oh, that's when I saw you guys because I thought he was
Yeah, right.
part of the band. I was very confused.
Yeah.
Everyone was part of every band
Yeah,
at
totally.
that stage.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So after that, I mean, things died down quite a bit for some time, and I don't think I was in any bands for a while after that. And I guess at that stage, I was probably working more than I had beforehand, both recording audiobooks and recording bands.
Yeah,
And
yes.
this is around about the time when I got to become acquainted with a well-known band called Caterpillar.
Oh,
And that's that's when this love affair started.
Dude, I was so scared. I've told you before. I was so scared. The first time I met you, I was standing there in the crowd with LD. I think we'd just seen you at the Grace Darling. And LD was like, dude, that's Starbuck from In Tongues. Like, we should talk to him. And I was like, nah, dude, what are we going to say? We just saw him blow the roof off the joint. What am I going to say?
That's really sweet. But yeah, that is it's really funny to think that anyone could ever have that kind of attitude around talking to me. But yeah, that's awfully sweet. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, like meeting you guys for the first time, and I think we talked about recording then.
I think that was our what's the word? Like foot in the door. Like the excuse to approach you was
right.
I think LD would have said, "Hey, Starbuck, you're an engineer." You would have been like, "Yes, who are you?" It would have been like, "Please record my band."
Yeah. Yeah.
Which it was basically a bribe. I was like, we'll pay him to record us and then maybe he'll be our friend.
Oh, it worked out in the end, didn't it? You got me.
Yeah. Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, been swindled. So I ended up recording you guys, which was awesome. So I can't remember if we recorded anything before the album.
No, because we had done an EP prior to that, which was in much more of a like a bit more of a formal setting. Like the guy was like very like recorded a lot with like professional musicians, like jazz musicians and things like that, people doing session
Yeah, yeah,
work. So
yeah.
that experience was vastly different. And I was very, that caused me to be very intimidated by the recording process, because I thought the structure of this is you have a guy just eyeballing you and you're under a magnifying glass, and that's how it is. And then
Yep.
recording with you, it's funny now. I never thought about it at the time that you had played all the instruments and obviously recorded all of them. That translated so well into the process of having someone to sit down one-on-one, understanding your instrument and where you're at musically, and then just facilitating much more of an enjoyable process. Like the results I thought spoke for themselves. Like I really, really enjoyed that process. And yeah, that was obviously a large part of why it was so productive.
Yep, totally. Yeah. Or at least it felt like it was productive a lot of the time, when maybe it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like we
It was a
like
bit of fuckery,
people
but
would, yeah.
we were also young, dude. I think
Yeah, totally.
like professionally, mentally, like we were just a rowdy bunch of dudes. And I think
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, like having you at the helm, it was as though you had like an understanding of that, being in that place, but you were at a level where you could kind of rein it in when necessary and get the results. Like I think, yeah, it was just such I don't know. Maybe I also have like the rose tinted glasses on that period, because I
Either
look
way, I'm
back
happy
very
to hear it.
fondly. Yeah, I look back very
Yeah.
fondly on that period, and it was just so good, man. Like, yeah, and obviously getting to know you as well throughout that whole process. It was, like the whole pay this guy, then we'll end up friends. Worked a treat.
Yeah, one to
Luckily, you
one.
weren't a prick.
Like, yeah, and that's I think that's a massive part of why I have enjoyed recording music so much, is like you get to spend a lot of time around some very cool people. And like you guys, we spent a lot of time around each other, and
Mm.
it was always enjoyable, like it was always great. Like obviously you have, I think, like creative differences, or you have, like some tense conversations around decisions, that kind of stuff at times. But I think all of us had so much kind of respect for each other that, any suggestion was usually met with, like the space to hold, to hold that and see what it
That
meant, kind of thing.
I think you've just dug up. That I think you've shattered my memory, because I do recall I was very difficult to work with on that front. I think
I wouldn't,
often when there was any introduction of like horns, things like that, I got very defensive and was of the opinion that it couldn't enhance a song if it wasn't recreatable live.
right.
I think I
Yeah,
just had this
right.
really, like, back to what you were saying earlier on, like I had like the punk rock attitude of
Mm-hmm.
this
Yep.
recording needs to represent four dudes rocking out, nothing but that. And then all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
things that I now listen back to and I think definitely enhance the sound that I was dead against. It's actually quite good.
Yeah. I think that's kind of something though that like, and I don't remember, like just reflecting on the whole process. There's no one in Caterpillar or anything that I remember as being like particularly problematic or like constantly at odds with, the process or what was going on or anything like that.
Mm.
Like I think everyone had different opinions at different times about things. And that's a part of what made the music so interesting, like this really eclectic kind of sound, with a pretty diverse range of influences behind it. I think you're going to get some differences of opinion, in a lot of ways. So yeah.
So what did you do out the back of that? So you finished that up. At what point did you start Pageant Families? Was that in the wake of In Tongues, Coins, all that jazz? There
It
was
was
nothing but after that, was
No,
there?
there wasn't really much after that. I think I recorded like one or two things, with friends kind of thing, like every now and then.
Hmm.
There's actually one track that I really can't remember when it was. It could have been after like Coins and In Tongues, but it was me and my friend Nick, and I still listen to it, and it's still I think one of the best things that I've been involved with musically. It was just me and him, and I was playing the drums on my E kit, couldn't play an acoustic kit because we were living in Richmond. So like just this shitty little, like townhouse thing that shares walls with other people, that kind of thing. But I did, yeah, the drums and the vocals and maybe the bass. But he'd written like lyrics and had vocal melody ideas, and had the guitar melody down as well. And again, we'll provide that in the links because I'd love
down below
to listen to that. Yeah, I can't remember when Pageant Families started, but I think it would have been Mitch that would have said like, I want to be doing things. Quite often, Mitch has been, like the driver of momentum.
Super enthusiastic as well, man. I remember the first time meeting him. Actually, it was at the Red Tape Records launch, and
we were in the Coins like album launch. I think we played first. I think that would have been when we released.
It was, yeah. And I remember chatting to it because we missed it. We missed LD and I rolled up and we'd missed Coins, and we were chatting to Mitch because I think we went and saw Gatherer. Someone else.
Yeah, they were on. Yeah, they're on later.
Yeah. Yep. So we rolled up late because we were too cool, and we were chatting with Mitch at the bar. We'd never even met him before, and he was full of beans and telling us all about this sick band that he was playing in. And I was like, if this band is 50% as legit as this guy bouncing out of his telling me, this is going to be a good time. And it was.
Yeah.
I remember. LD bought the CD off him. Just after hearing him talk about it, LD was like, "Yeah, dude, I'll buy a CD." And we listened to it in the car on the way home. And we're like,
"That's great."
We dropped the ball. We should have got there earlier.
Mitch is quite the salesman in that regard.
He sold me on Pageant Families as well. I was already on board, but I think it was him that I spoke to about it early on. He was comparing it to things like Refused, and again, I was like, "Whoa, that's a big call, man."
Big shoes to fill. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Pageant Families, so I guess I joined that band, and I can't remember if I suggested I do the vocals. I don't know what made me think I could. But, went for it anyway. And like the first track that we wrote, it ended up having like quite a raw and like, I think like kind of a Refused-y kind of vibe to it.
Is this Hollow? Are we talking about Hollow?
Yeah, Hollow. Yep.
What a track. Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
From there on though, like I think we really struggled to figure out what the band would sound like. And I think that's kind of evident in most of the tracks. Again, I think in a really interesting way. I don't think it was detrimental to say the music, but it was detrimental to our writing process. It was really, really, really slow. It took us forever to write anything. And, I think we're all quite perfectionistic still at that stage. And we had the idea of, like, we all want to be really happy with whatever it is that we end up writing and playing. But, like that being said, the few songs that we did kind of write and record ended up, I ended up recording a few of them at, where was it? Oh, it's closing down now. Or maybe it already has. Aesthetic, yeah.
Yep.
I used the big room in Aesthetic as a recording studio for a weekend, much like I did with Caterpillar.
It's the only reason I know it, yeah.
We ended up, we didn't put out any physical releases. We didn't actually release anything.
You released t-shirts.
We did do t-shirts. We did have t-shirts. That's true. We put some songs up on Triple J Unearthed just to see what would happen. And we ended up one week hitting the #1 punk song in the charts, which was a phenomenal feeling.
Unsurprising.
Really phenomenal. Super cool. We ended up, like getting a couple of comments from the guys on Triple J. We got played a few times on Double J, I think, and we got a little bit of play on Triple J as well, probably Home and Hosed or Hardcore, which I can't remember. But yeah, it sort of, it ended up being a thing of like Nick. I would say like when we had a bit of momentum, Nick ended up leaving to live in Canada
That's
for a
right.
couple of
Yeah.
years, and then
Yep.
we kind of like let it rest for a while, and then we got Jack on board. Jack was one of the guitarists in Tongues and
He was playing
Coins,
bass.
and
Right.
um um no, it was Luca who was playing bass. Jack was playing
Oh,
the other
that's right.
guitar. I was guitar and
Hmm.
vocalist. I can't remember if I've said that already, but
Yeah.
I was the
Well,
guitar.
people seeing the video, there's going to be a link to some bangers down below.
Okay. Yeah. So I was at that stage, like Jack, I think, was a bit uncertain about like writing that style of music because it's not really his thing. But I think he ended up writing some really, really cool stuff with us. And
Was
then
that
Nick
when you
came
wrote,
back.
was that when you wrote tracks like "Work for Peanuts"? Because that was a bit of a different stylistic direction. That was cool
I
as hell. That
honest
was such a banger, man.
was a cool song. Yeah. I really can't remember when like when Jack's influence kind of
Hmm.
was, if that makes any sense.
Just wanted to plug that
Yeah.
tune because it's a track.
It was a lot of fun to play, that's for sure. And the thing with Pageant Families was like, I think what made it easy for me to be the vocalist in that band was um, the music just like supported, I think, or like conveyed that energy that I
Hmm.
wanted to be putting out as a vocalist
Yep.
so well, like exactly where I wanted it to be. Um, like it was aggressive, but it wasn't. I don't know. It was like we tried to make it interesting. We tried to
Hmm.
make it like melodic. We didn't want it to be like overly complex, but at the same time, I think like that's kind of just what we have a habit of doing is making things needlessly complex. Um, and like I think we wanted things to, yeah, we didn't want it to be, I guess, predictable, I suppose.
Hmm. Do you find
So
that like having an extensive experience in playing various instruments, like you not wanting to do the whole, like we said earlier, the Billy Corgan thing, does it get the more bands that you play in your experience, does it become more difficult to be effective in group songwriting when you have so much experience doing so many different styles, recording, performing? Can that be almost like when you get on Netflix and you get that choice paralysis? Like there's just too many
okay, yeah,
options. Do you get a bit
I
of
get,
that? You're like, well,
I
there are so many ways that we could take this, and I know how we could
um.
do it. What do we do?
Yes, I think so. I think definitely, especially when you are writing with other people who also have. It's not just about strong opinions about where they want the songs to go or anything. It's more
Mm-hmm.
like we want everyone to have like input on this thing, and when everyone has these different ideas, it can be really hard to nail down a direction, even for a song. Quite often, some of the songs just felt like they wrote themselves. Other ones, it was just like like grinding rocks together for weeks at a time kind of thing.
Mm.
I think, I mean, if I answer that question about like, being in different bands making it hard, the thing is, it hasn't often felt like being in different bands because I've written with the same people,
Yeah, that's
like on
true.
and off for like the past 15 years. It's actually been, um, you know, uh, not exactly the same people, but,
Mm-hmm.
like Jack, Nick, Mitch, Andy, even Luca as well. Luca, the bass player in Pageant Families, he was in Fuck Mountain, that band that I mentioned earlier.
Jeez,
um,
coming full circle.
yeah, so uh, it's sort of it. I think it has made it. I guess I don't want to say harder,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that gives it like a negative connotation. It's more like it can be really challenging to figure out directionality, I guess, when you've got so many different creative perspectives from different people. I will also say, I think being a drummer specifically, and then being in a band where you're not the drummer, I will have ideas about what the drums could do,
Yeah.
and I will try to be modest about my opinions on what the drums could do. but I think that's probably been a thing that between me and Mitch, you know, like when we're in a band, I think we've entered into this agreeable negotiation space where I think he's been quite reasonable about the amount of input I can kind of give in that regard.
I also found that the longer you work, particularly with a drummer, the better your communication becomes. Like there were often times in my experience when working with Bina where I would just verbally spout some absolute garbage at him and say, you know, a bit more like da 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 da, drop a bit more crash in there, and then he would do exactly what I was trying to communicate, and anyone on the outside would have no idea what you're talking about. But
for sure, yeah. I think you end up like speaking your own languages between one another, especially when like if none of you were say classically trained, you know, like you don't have the language of music as it is taught, as it should probably be learned. So yeah, you end up having, I guess, your own way of talking to one another and conveying ideas that get like translated between each other. But yeah, for sure, that's definitely been, I think, a thing over time, and you do develop that. And I think just working in bands in general, your communication skills skyrocket. I think, like you just, you know, like you learn negotiation skills, you learn to compromise. You know, you learn to like you learn when to back off. You know, if you can see that someone's getting irritated and it's not, you know, like you learn to let go a lot of what you want, and you learn to differentiate between what you want and what's important. And I think that's a super duper important skill, I would say.
Absolutely. I think for me, I learned a lot of that retrospectively, like upon reflection and after, unfortunately, after things would have gone pear-shaped. And so in some instances, it would be years after the fact of a conversation or whatever blow up occurred, that it becomes very clear that certain things are just not worth the energy, the negative energy. Like there are things that you can just let go. A lot of the things, particularly when it comes to a recording, you know, getting fired up about having a gong sample one time in one song in one part, it's not that big of a deal. But at the time, it's huge. You know,
it's everything.
It's like, this is going to be the difference, boys, between making it and not. If we put this gong in, we are going nowhere, man. Up until this point, it's a hit. Put that gong in, forget about it.
For sure.
But it's never like that.
No, it's very, very rarely ever like that. I watched a really interesting video recently of, I think he's the guy that founded Patreon, right? So he was a very, very productive, creative mind in that he's put out a lot of different things. Like he was in a band and he did the videos for the band, and he's also done other super creative projects. And he ends up talking about the realization that he had is that just like in sales, you have funnels in creative whatever pursuits, in that you put out like 100 songs and then like, you know, 30 of them get quite a few listens, and then, you know, like 3 of them get mentioned in interviews or whatever, and, you know, like, and then eventually one might get played on the radio, that kind of thing. So you know, I think the more you realize that everything that you're doing in the band is a part of a process to just produce content in a way. It sounds kind of, you know, heartless, but it's actually, I think, something that could be quite valuable is to not get so stuck in a process that you have almost stopped because you can't resolve, you know, the way you feel about one particular aspect of it or something like that. And this idea of like publishing, not finishing art, because things get published unfinished, or that they feel unfinished all of the time. But when you apply, you know, deadlines to these things, you know, it gives you a different way of thinking about what it is that you're doing, because it all starts with noodling, like it all starts with like
Yeah,
just a little
absolutely.
idea that you have, and then eventually it becomes, much bigger than that. And yeah, I think it's something that's just totally unintuitive to a lot of artists, is that um, I guess this process, um, uh, it's more productive, I guess, in the long run to just keep going, in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. And I think there are often those times where if you hit a roadblock, like it's just not working, you can just sidestep that and keep going with something else. Like I think often
Yep.
that would be something that upon reflection was often became a big hindrance, getting bogged down in the detail on insignificant things that just weren't that big
Yep,
of a deal. And
for sure.
a lot of that, yeah, running it like a business was,
Mm,
yeah, it's
yeah.
just,
That
yeah.
like that being said, though, like I had a lot of respect for the fact that you were pushing as hard as you were in Caterpillar, um, because you wanted something out of it, and you knew that it would take, like a good amount of effort and focus from, not just you but kind of everyone to
Mm.
actually get something. And I think that can often be like the make or break in regards to whether or not a band does anything at all.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
so. Yeah, and I think that's it as well. Like, particularly upon reflection, like everything that, say, in both of our musical endeavors, everything that happened, like even the smallest gigs to the sold out shows and stuff like that, all of that was driven by someone was like coordinating that and organizing that stuff, and often that stuff goes by the wayside.
mm,
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
very, very true.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I wouldn't be too hard on yourself in that regard. I know, like,
Hmm.
um, it was probably frustrating at times not having everyone, like not feeling like you were on the same page as everyone else, or everyone else not being on your on the same page as you.
Yeah, I was just running the dictatorship for sure. I was very, very intense.
But like, yeah, I feel like you guys probably achieved certain things that without that kind of, that focus and drive, maybe you wouldn't have necessarily played as many shows, or even, put
Yeah,
out an album, or whatever else. So
yeah, for sure. So
yeah.
what's cooking next, dude? Are you gonna join a band once you're allowed? Once you're
Um,
allowed to do stuff again?
so just before all of this happened, I actually um, did, I guess, tentatively join a band with Mitch and with a few other guys. Um, I see those eyebrows of yours there, getting pretty rowdy.
Through the
Um,
roof.
as joined as a vocalist, as a pure, like, just vocalist, which obviously I've never done I've never done before. Um, but that's been an interesting thing because
Have you had a
um,
jam? Did you have a sesh?
we had a couple of, like, maybe two or three jams, and I'd sort of written a couple of vocal melodies, and yeah, it felt like it was going okay. I I think I have run out of a lot of motivation throughout these times, and it's been really hard to almost like feel like, to decide to sit down and work on something creative. I'm
Like this?
also studying. Yeah, exactly, like this. This happened because you messaged me and you were like, "I'm going to interview you now," and I was like, "Yeah, all right, okay, cool."
Isn't that better? Dude, even like at the 2 minutes before this, I was like, oh, I get my glasses so I look smart. They haven't been clean in ages. That's it. I was like, nah. I was like, I'm overthinking it. I'm thinking too much, dude. That's gonna
Yeah,
be my new philosophy for a little while. Just have a dip,
yeah,
man. Have a crack,
good.
whatever.
Have a dip.
Yeah.
Dip the toe in.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, hopefully things can resume um, once once things pick back up again. I've
Mhm.
been um, trying to, again, like, it's just been very hard with motivation and everything, but like
Mhm.
trying to collaboratively do some stuff with my friend Nick as well. We
Mhm.
finally started using this software called Ohm Studio, which basically lets you in real time record into the same timeline, and you can hear what the other person has just recorded.
Oh, that's
So
clever.
yeah, it doesn't have the same like extensive functionality as say Pro Tools or Reaper or something like that, but it's more, I think, designed for like, let's get some ideas down, let's bounce off each other, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And the handful of times that I've done it, it's actually been like exactly what you'd hope it would do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so yeah, hopefully that kind of continues. But everything I think is at a like a bit of a lukewarm kind of temperature at the moment. But
Yes, indeed.
I don't know. I think when things open back up again, hopefully productivity kind of takes it up a notch as well. I've also been for some time putting the finishing touches on 4 tracks that I recorded last year by this is a guy called Dave is his name, and he was in a band called the Latoners a while ago.
Oh, why do I know that? Did you guys play together?
They were.
In
I think
Tongues, the Latoners.
I think we probably would have played together. I think at some stage, but I also recorded the Latoners. I think I did an album and an EP.
There you go. That's why I would be familiar with that.
So yeah, Dave from the Latoners, Ben, who was I think one of the guitarists, is now the drummer in this little outfit, and a bassist as well. And yeah, Dave lives overseas, but he's just been contributing a few things since we recorded last year, and I've been trying to put the finishing touches on them for some time, and I feel very, very bad they're not done. Yeah, he's hounding me now like every few days to get it done, and I understand. It's just been, I've been studying psychology. I'm pretty close to finishing my undergrad in the next few weeks, which is cool, and hopefully going into honors next year. But it's also just meant that trying to get anything done, that has had to be the absolute priority. And
yeah, of course,
that alone has just been super duper tricky. But yeah, I don't know, hopefully this summer is just a lot of fun.
Just, absolutely hanging for it. It will be well overdue to have a proper catch up and get into some mischief.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know, I think I should probably pack it in. This thing probably goes like 6 hours.
If anyone is still watching by this stage, like, surely you have something better to do by now.
Well, hopefully they're like, man, they've watched it on 2 times speed. So
yeah, maybe just provide a manuscript or something so they can just
timestamp.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel weird to have talked for